Welcome back to Grasping the Gridiron. I'm your host, Zach Thummel, and today we'll be looking at my Seahawks mock draft for rounds 1 through 3 and the team needs there. We'll look at Cooper Kupp and his outlook in Seattle, and lastly, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and how his career may end. Alright, so for rounds 1 through 3 for Seattle, they've got 5 picks. So they've got the 18th overall pick in the first round, the 50th overall pick in the second round, the 52nd overall pick in the second round, the 82nd overall pick in the third, and then lastly, the 92nd overall pick in the third. So, the needs for Seattle are all over the board. I've got, in no particular order, interior offensive line, inside linebacker, defensive line, wide receiver, and tight end. So we'll be looking and exploring some possible fits there for rounds 1 through 3. For the pick in round 1, I will be giving my analysis on multiple positions, so the needs that I just listed. And then for rounds 2 and 3, I'll just be giving who I selected. Alright, so with pick 18 in round 1, I think the biggest team need is interior offensive line for Seattle, but inside linebacker is another one. So, we're going to look at the other positional fits here first. So, I mean, if Seattle goes linebacker, Jahad Campbell out of Alabama is a guy I like, just to name a guy. But honestly, I don't see Seattle going linebacker here. And I envision them going to more of an impact position and one that they need a little bit more here as far as impact goes. Like a guy, Luther Burden from Missouri, a wide receiver, a guy that could really come in and be a potential number one receiver, a really good athlete, and a guy that could stretch that field at that one position to open things up for Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba underneath. And then, at the tight end position, if Colson Loveland's available at 18, not sure if he will be, but, if he happens to be, I think that would be an incredibly great pick there, and obviously one that I think could be impactful. And if Seattle wanted to trade up with pick 18 and they really feel Colson Loveland could be a huge impact player, which I think he could, I think that would be a great move for Seattle and one that they should entertain. But back to the first team need that I mentioned, and really ultimately what I think Seattle will end up going with is the interior offensive line. You just signed Josh Jones. He's a guy that can play both guard and tackle for you, but so I imagine Seattle slides him in to the inside to play guard, and then I think this is the selection here, and I look at a guy like Tyler Booker out of Alabama. He a guard would be great, but Kelvin Banks is ultimately my favorite pro prospect, and I think the guy that is the most pro-ready out of the top offensive linemen. When comparing their tape, I like Kelvin Banks the best. He had minimal mistakes, minimal communication errors, great in pass pro. Reminds me, as far as getting off and having that third eye to get in front of the edge rusher, he reminds me of Lane Johnson. Not quite the athlete, obviously, but a guy that definitely is a savvy player and has high football IQ. I noticed that he created a great wall on their counters when they would run counter, and I think that, and then pulling on counter too, I think that it was almost impeccable. I mean, it was almost perfect. It really was impeccable, though. It just, you look at the level of competition he was playing against. Georgia, I watched him play against Georgia twice, watched him play against Michigan. Their first year in the SEC, I think it's a great evaluation of what he would look like against pro competition. And he's just a guy that, if you go watch his tape, I think you'll see the same things and say the same things that I'm saying. So with the 18th pick in my mock draft for the Seattle Seahawks, I have them selecting Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle out of Texas. And, I know he's a tackle, but I think Seattle, he's a guy that can easily slide inside. I mentioned that pulling ability, really good pass protector, but can really dig his nose in and put his nose to the grindstone in the run game. And I think this would be a phenomenal pick if he happens to be available, and a guy that could come in and fill a need immediately for Seattle. With the second pick that the Seahawks have in round 2, pick 50 overall, I have them taking Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. 6'4", 214 pounds, ran a 4.47 40-yard dash at the combine, has a 39-inch vertical jump, had a 90 overall athleticism score, according to NFL.com, and a 78 overall production score, according to NFL.com. This is a guy, a 6'4", 214, big-bodied receiver, can go behind Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Just be a guy that can be that deep option, help out Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba over the middle of the field by taking away stuff deep. And who better to learn how to, refine better yards after the catch and route running than Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. I mean, these guys are really, really good technician route runners, and I think could, help refine parts of his game, that being Higgins, where, maybe he struggles a little bit more in those fine route running situations. He's more just the athlete. So I think that this would be a guy that could, as far as scheme wise, be that fit and really help out in Seattle. So the third pick that Seattle has is in round 2, the 52nd overall. And I have them taking Landon Jackson, the defensive end / edge out of Arkansas. He's 6'6", 264 pounds, ran a 4.68 40-yard dash at the combine, has a 40.5-inch vertical jump at 6'6", 264 pounds, a 40.5-inch vertical jump. That's unbelievable. He was second team All-SEC, and this guy, I mean, you just listen to those numbers athletically, and this guy can play the true edge position in a 3-4. He could also play the hands-down defensive end in the 3-4. Would be a really great pick if he's available for Seattle. I think he can be versatile, is fast, can jump, strong. I really think this would be a great pick for Seattle, and a guy that, would be fun to have play alongside, Byron Murphy, and recently acquired DeMarcus Lawrence. This guy could really, really help this Seattle defense in a great way. With the fourth pick for Seattle, the 82nd overall pick, I have them selecting Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU. He's 6'5", 251 pounds. And, I think the thing that stands out to me is he's got NFL bloodlines. He's related to Jason Taylor. And the biggest thing for me is that he can run an expanded route tree. And in today's NFL, that is huge. You pair him with Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Marcus Valdes-Scantling deep downfield. I think that Mason Taylor's ability to run a variety of routes would really open up a lot as far as play calling goes, play action. You incorporate that with the run game. I think, Mason Taylor sometimes is a lackluster blocker. That's one of his criticisms that I've been reading into, and I just think that when you look at the way that today's NFL is set up and Sam Darnold and what he does well, this would just be able to highlight everybody in this offense. And now you look at the fifth pick here in round 3. This is in the final pick we'll be looking at in my mock draft. This is pick 92 overall. And I have Seattle taking Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, ran a 4.42 40-yard dash. This guy's a really good athlete and a guy that was fun to watch at Utah State. Just a really, really good athlete. Someone that I think would bring great depth to the Seahawks wide receiver room, and someone that could be a really, really good scheme fit, and I think Sam Darnold would play well with, and a guy that could just be another weapon to that offense and help those wide receivers get open, especially as Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba are really good route runners. So the more athletes you have around that, the better to really help exploit their or just show their really, really good tendencies and play styles. All right. So looking at Cooper Kupp and his fit and what, the outlook of his career looks like in Seattle, I really think that for the short term, when you look at how he fits in Seattle with the current roster, not including the players that I just had them hypothetically draft in rounds 1 through 3. We'll just play in the world of reality for right now. The Seahawks have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, as I mentioned, and then at the 1, the true X, and then Cooper Kupp obviously will be at the 2, and Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot. I think that this combination is underrated, and I think is flying under the radar as far as what NFL analysts are talking about. I really think that it's a true scheme fit, and I think it's one that people just don't really understand how it's going to work, because when you blend this team with depth from the draft, this wide receiver room with depth from the draft, whoever it is, go out, get 2, maybe 3 more wide receivers. You blend that, and then you look at the play action game, the potential that can be there, and where Sam Darnold succeeds. I think Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are going to be phenomenal in the ground game, especially if they continue to bolster this offensive line, go out and get 1 to 2 more guys that could potentially, go in immediately or develop over time. Again, the offensive line is a priority, so if they patch that up, that's really the finishing piece to this all. But I really feel great about the fit of Cooper Kupp in Seattle. Moving on to Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers are fine on waiting on Rodgers' decision, according to a Sports Illustrated article from Bridget Kennedy. And that's essentially where we're at here, is for the last bit of NFL free agency craziness, is where's Aaron Rodgers going to decide. And it's either he's in Pittsburgh and he becomes a Steeler, or he retires at this point. The Minnesota talks have been mostly shut down, according to this article as well. And if you were Minnesota, there's no sense in wasting J.J. McCarthy's development and going and spending a ton of money on an older quarterback when you don't know if he's going to even produce at the level that he has previously. So I think that if you're Aaron Rodgers, you just need to hurry up and let your teammates know what the decision is moving forward. Thank you for listening to Grasping the Gridiron. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, share on Spotify, and follow as well. Please share this podcast with as many people as you can. We're trying to grow it and get it as big as we can, develop some guests, and add some more things to the podcast. So leave your suggestions in the comments.